Dr. Anona Blackwell. Welcome to the podcast.
No, no, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Please call me Anona, though. I
Anona.
haven't practiced. I haven't practiced orthodox medicine since I retired. But thank you all the same.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm,
Gotcha. That's awesome. Anona.
mm.
Okay. Well, yeah. Welcome to Eric's Psychedelic Breakfast. It's you're in over there in Wales right now, or yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Abergavenny in Wales, South Wales. Yeah,
Oh,
and I
cool.
was I was curious. You asked your guests what they've had for breakfast. Well, I thought I'd better be good because I'm on a diet. So I will tell you if you want to know. But
Yes.
it was well, I had. Yeah, what did I have? I had organic coconut water as a drink
Nice.
instead of my usual coffee with sugar. And I had some wholemeal bread with some French butter. I like French butter, only a scraping, and a tiny. I've got a little frying pan, and I put an organic egg in and just fried it and popped it on the toast. So there you go. That's my breakfast over.
And I must ask, did the coconut water have pulp?
Sorry, coke. Oh no, coconut water. It's coconut water. It's
But did
just
it
ordinary.
no pulp?
No,
No pulp.
pulp. It's
Okay.
just it just looks like coloured water, well, opaque water, but it's very nice
Gotcha.
and it's good for you and fairly low in calories.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. That sounds like a delicious breakfast.
Well, yeah, I'd have loved to have had my usual marmalade on toast, but no, there we go. That's the
Yeah.
boring bit over with.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, I was just wondering maybe we could start by asking you what kind of inspired or motivated or sparked kind of like your interest originally to shift from the doctor to the
Mm,
mystical perspective.
mm. I think I always was mystical, to be honest. And in a way, I went from being mystical to being more orthodox to then becoming swaying the other way. Because as a child, I was very, very close to nature. And I was aware I had a little spirit friend, child,
Oh,
when I was young. Because we lived in quite, I think when you're poor, you tend to be closer to the land. And it's more of an existential lifestyle, and so we grew our own food and we had bees. So I sound as though I was autistic, but I can remember because we lived in the countryside and I didn't have any friends of my own age, and so I would sit next to the beehives and talk to the bees, which sounds a bit weird, but I seem to have probably why I'm a workaholic actually, because bees are. But so
working.
I had a spirit child when I was a kid. I think a lot of children do. And I can remember her name was Christina. She had short black cropped hair. And I used to insist my mother set a place for her at the table. And what was strange, I never asked my mother to put any food on the table. I think that's because I was greedy and wanted it for myself. So that was that. And then when I was, it's in the book, but do stop me if I become boring. The kind of paranormal experience that really affected me, I was probably about 17 years of age, and we lived in a tin shed, and it was really quite, uncomfortable. But I remember I always wanted to go to school because I felt the only way of getting out of our poverty was by education, mainly because I was quite plump and I thought I'm not going to marry a rich man. No, so I've got a wicked sense of humour, just to warn you. But anyway, I
Perfect.
can remember. I remember one morning. I didn't want to go to school, which was very unusual for me. And Mum said, "Why?" And I said, "Oh, somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to die." And I didn't know who it was. And the same thing happened the next day. And I was so anxious. My mother said, "Do you want me to call the doctor?" And I thought, well, he'll think I'm mad because, uh, I've no reason to believe it. I just had this abject fear. And then I think it was on the third or the fourth day, I woke up and I was incredibly calm. And I said to Mum, "Oh, it's okay now. Mr. Sharp has died." That was our deputy headmaster. And I said, "He's at peace." And I was at peace. And when I went to school, to my surprise, in some ways, the chap had walked home from school and then just died in his sleep. But we didn't have a phone. and in those days we didn't have television or anything, and so I think I probably became a school witch after that. Although they didn't call it me that because I had told my friend somebody was going to die. So that was that, and then I did this kind of biology biophysics degree, and so you have the right side of your brain, the more mystical stuff, sort of educated out of you, and then I suppose the next most important thing was when my dad died when I was a junior doctor, and he came into my bedroom and said, "Oh, phone your mother," and then disappeared into the wall. But I don't know how much you want me to go on because I'm a real talker. 3 hours later, all you listeners will be
Yeah.
fast asleep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's really interesting. Yeah, wow. And that's so interesting. I personally have felt like sometimes um uh, it's like a deja vu. I'll have like a dream and then many years later
Mm,
that will
mm,
happen and no one will know and I'll just like tell myself
yeah.
I totally dreamt this. Like
Mm,
and I don't know if it's
mm,
like a coincidence, you know what I'm saying? Or um
mm.
like maybe I've lived this before. Like, do you have any theories on how, or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how
Well,
it works?
uh, yeah, it's very difficult because the science part of me wants proof, but
Right, yeah.
the kind of the hedge witch part of me thinks, yeah, well, if you believe, as Einstein did, that there is only the now and the past, present, and the future are all kind of quantumly entangled, whatever that means. But he understood it. I'm not Einstein, but I think sometimes we can flip to the future and
Hmm.
we regard it. But I think our sacred contract is determined before we're born. And I think we have the only part of free will we have, I think, the major part anyway, is when we decide to incarnate, we have an agreed contract as to the major events in our lives. And
Um,
then we kind of live through them. So I think once we're here, we're pretty much stuck with the people we're going to meet, the major life events. And so I think it's like tuning into what's called the Akashic records. Um, so yeah, that's the only way I can explain it. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think there is a scientific answer for you.
yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I honestly subscribe to that idea as well. But I here's an interesting question from that. It's like how do you think people could um like work on themselves if it's kind of all already, kind of chosen out for you before you were born and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so much pressure, you know what I mean, to make the right
Mm.
decisions and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
um
how could do you mean how can you chill out in this really chaotic world?
yeah, right. Because it's like, why would I choose this sometimes? It's like,
Oh yeah, oh yeah, I can tell you that. I've been there, bought the T-shirt. Um, yeah, I got to be careful because there's a lot of stuff I didn't put in the book. But in 2010, I had major surgery for what was thought to be adrenal cancer. I had a massive scar, and yeah, my morphine was stopped incorrectly after on day 2 or day 3, and I was in complete and utter agony. And I can remember in my hospital bed
mm,
screaming, "Oh Lord, why have you forsaken me?" For a second, I thought, I can understand, Christ, this wasn't a good deal, you know? I said, "Why have you forsaken me?" And what I got back straight away was not, "Oh, poor you." What I got in my head was, "You chose this as part of your contract, so put up and shut up. You need to suffer so that other people won't." Now, I can't see how me suffering made the slightest difference to anyone else, but maybe it got me more thinking about trying to get my book completed because, to be honest, I wrote my first book when I was 13. Now, if you saw the poverty we were brought up in, it's quite funny. We used to have sacks on the floor and coats on the bed and no books in the house because we couldn't afford them. And yet I wrote a book between the ages of 13 and 18. And so I've always wanted to write. It was a way yeah, I think actually that might answer your question, come to think of it. I can remember years and years ago reading in the British Medical Journal that people who suffer from depression benefit from writing down their thoughts. Because if you've got a lot of negative, I was going to say negative shit, but you know what I mean. I've got to be polite since you're recording this. This negative stuff going on in your head. I think when you write it, you almost take it out of your head, manifest it on paper, and then you can kind of burn it. And and one of the things I used to help my patients with, because I always was a bit mad, I found people who've been abused, or particularly sexually abused or raped. Um, they were the most rewarding for me as a doctor to help, because I felt I could do the most good. But obviously the situations were absolutely tragic, and I can remember on one occasion I had a lady who bad things had happened, let's we say. And she was an artist, and I said, "How are you coping?" And she kept painting what happened to her, doing
Mm.
drawings of it. And she said that calmed her down, because it was almost as though she didn't need to think anymore, because it had manifest. And I think for me, writing helped a lot, because when I was young, my dad had a heart attack when I was 11, and my mother became very depressed. And I used to write about my feelings and my thoughts. And I can remember my mother found one of my essays and took it to the GP. And he said, "Oh, don't worry, that's her way of coping." So, with your listeners, what would I say? For me, lots of things. I love gardening. I love my dog. Um, I don't really meditate, but weeding is so boring. That is for me a form of meditation. Even housework is, because I hate it. So yeah, and I think most importantly, really, I've got beautiful, lovely, lovely friends, and
Yeah.
we share any problems we've got. So I think having a good social network and a sense of humour, some things in life are so awful. Sometimes all you can do is laugh.
Yeah, I think that's like a great advice. Like I think that's one of the first things you have to do to move forward. Maybe just n notice the absurdity of it all. Like,
Mm. Oh yeah, especially in America. We won't mention the T word.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it is interesting. Like when I kept thinking about like being in the dentist and how
Mm,
much anxiety there
mm.
is. What I got my wisdom teeth pulled out and
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yes, I did too when I was. Well,
yeah.
I don't know how old you are, but you look as you could be my grandson. But
But yeah, it was just so interesting thinking about like pain in that moment. How
mm.
how you can like notice it and uh kind of identify with the witness, right? Like there's something here that isn't being hurt. There's something here that is not being touched. And like physically it's really easy to feel a lot of that stuff, but I feel like sometimes when it's not physical, it's a lot harder for us to like notice that we're kind of
Yeah,
experiencing.
what you're saying is physical pain is easier to cope with than mental pain, is it? Or
Yeah, yeah, it's just right there, it's very
mm.
obvious.
Yeah,
um
this fear. Yeah, and oh God, do I suffer from it? Because being an empath, and I live on my own with my gorgeous Jack Russell, who's currently in my bedroom sulking. But it's funny, really. My mind is going to different places. You mentioned wisdom teeth. Now, I had wisdom teeth removed when I was 21, and they actually fractured my jaw because not accidentally, they were so badly impacted.
oh
And it's what got me into medicine. There were two things that made me go from being into biophysics, because my parents had paid for me to have my wisdom teeth removed privately because it was near finals. And so my a nun, it was a not Catholic, but it was a Catholic hospital, and a nun gave me, I think it was pethidine, and it took me from absolute agony to a level of normality. And I thought that is such a sacred, beautiful thing to be able to do. So it was one of two key events that made me think, because
Yeah.
we were poor, I thought being a doctor, it's like doctors were like gods,
Yeah.
and how could I aspire to be one? But the sheer joy of being able to reduce someone's sadness, pain, um, yeah, it makes you feel good. So really, it's a dual process. We may be helping our patients, but they're helping us.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and you have helped a lot of people, which is really, really nice.
I hope so. It's funny, really, because the work I did on chlamydia um, stopped an awful lot of pelvic infection. Um, and it's doing stupid things that talk about negative thoughts. I think, oh gosh, what if someone was born who's going to grow up to be somebody really bad who wouldn't have been born if I hadn't done that research, if you see what I mean. So it's surprising I can even beat myself up over positive events.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Um, yeah, yeah, that's why I think like a lot of the reasons why I do this podcast is just kind of like a feeling, it's just like I really enjoy it. A lot of it isn't logical, A lot of it is
Mm,
like
mm.
I just I want to get it out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that because I've had quite a few mystical experiences. It's mostly ones in the book, and some that were so amazing I couldn't even write about them. But I want to get it out there that it's not just the materialistic world we live in, and to try and get a more holistic approach to, well, to healthcare, but to life itself. I'm an incredible recycler, because I think if you waste anything, then it's sacred Mother Earth that's suffering. And so I'm still wearing clothes belonging to my aunt who died in 2005. And yeah, and even household waste. I got a wormery, I got a compost heap. I've even got, well, I've got a sewage thing, but I can't use that on the land. It's against the law, but I would if I could to feed I think everything, if possible, should be recycled.
Mm.
And I hate it when they have people that buy disposable clothes. They wear them once. I got this thing. I wear clothes, and when they're really ragged, they become dust cloths. I mean, when that's the thing, they use them to light the fire. So anyway, carry on. Next
Yeah.
question.
No, no, that is fascinating. We have to take care of our mother
Mm.
that birthed us. Yeah. Um, yeah, I kind of wanted to get a little bit into a your near-death experience that you
Oh
had.
yeah, yeah.
Because
Mm,
near-death experiences are just so fascinating.
mm.
Just as a whole, do you think that like does DMT get released in the brain during near-death experiences or
Well,
like kind of
I tell you,
chemical?
yeah. Do you know what's really strange? I thought you might ask about that. What I got here, I can't see my face on this. Is there
Oh
any way
no.
I can get? Mm. I want to see what if you can you see that? It's
Yeah.
it's yeah. This is my original Life After Life, which I bought in 1975. Raymond Moody, the guy who introduced near-death experiences to the world. Really, it's all a
No.
bit tatty, but yeah, I've had that since 1975. So my interest in NDEs has been quite long-standing. I can't see my own image on the screen, so hang on.
Yeah,
If I
no.
press that OK button, maybe that. Yeah, but there we are. I can see
Oh,
it
there
now.
we go. Nice.
Here we go. Yeah. And so yeah, and I have one of my dear friends who originally was part of my meditation group was Penny Sartori, Dr. Sartori, who is one of the international experts on NDEs. Um, my own one, I can tell you about. It was only a very minor part of my spiritual experiences, but excuse me, I had been given something called a phenothiazine because yeah, what happened is that I was feeling very nauseated before a operating theatre, And one of the doctors gave me a drug to which I had a severe allergy and had something called an ocular gyrate crisis. And so they had to give me intravenous medication to get me over it. But during the time when I was semi conscious, I suppose, I can remember um, it was dark. I wasn't scared. I felt peace and joy. And it wasn't a full NDE, but all I could hear telepathically was, if you want to die, you can stay here, because it was blissful. This place I was almost like floating in. But they said, I remember, my mother just lost my dad, and I thought, if she loses me as well, it'll hurt her too much, and I couldn't bear to do that. So I said I better go back because my mum would miss me, you know. And they said, but if you do go back, your life will be very, very hard, which it was. So so I came back, and then it was over. But I kind of accepted it, and it may be. I think it's almost in Welsh tradition. We've always respected our elders and hedge witches, that sort of thing. And I was brought up very close to the land and very accepting of what we would call the paranormal, I suppose. Dad was a dowser, and when my grandfather built houses in the Welsh valleys, he would dowse to see where to dig the wells. He was very good at grafting, and he was also quite telepathic as well. But he was just a bus driver. I'm saying jest. He was very bright. He used to wire my grandfather's houses. So, mm. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but have a go at me if I haven't.
Yes, yes. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I think that ties into a little bit on that, like like that free will that we were talking about earlier,
Mm,
like that
mm.
moment where you had to choose. Maybe it was similar to when, like when you die or something.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. I had a feeling that I'd have had to come back anyway, maybe in a new life, if I
right?
hadn't fulfilled. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And like maybe if you say no, like see that's something I think about like the ultimate goal of like spiritual work or healing or
Mm,
whatever
mm,
or like the break of samsara or
mm.
it's like somehow like not coming back is supposed to be like the goal or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's it. That's absolutely it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's just like so hard to understand for me in my head
Mm, mm.
sometimes.
I think because to be honest, I'm now comfortably off. I got a nice bungalow. I've got a lovely garden. I've got good friends. Obviously, everyone's got health issues when you get to my age. But yeah, would I want to come back? No, no, too much pain. Someone, I remember I was speaking to one of my relatives, and we were asking each other, if we could come back, would we want our lives exactly as they are? One of them said yes, and with me, I thought no. Working 120 hours when you're a junior doctor is crippling, and I couldn't face doing it again. I think when you're young, you're more resilient, But yeah, and too much physical pain. Yeah, no. So I think yes, I got to be really good, as good as I can be anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I try to find a way to get that feeling while I'm still here,
Yeah, yeah.
that
Is
feeling
that
of
what motivated? Yeah, is that what motivated you to do these interviews?
great question. Honestly, part of it, yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Mm,
Like just learning just different techniques to just ultimately be in the present, just coming back
mm,
to
mm,
the moment, I think, and different ways to, everybody kind of teaches me kind of like a different way to
mm.
be in the moment.
You're a truth seeker. You're a
Yeah.
truth seeker, and I wish I had you as a grandson. I think you'd be fun to talk to. I'd get you gardening though.
Yeah, I love gardening as well. But yeah, uh you said you were an empath. That I think that's really interesting.
Oh yeah,
Um
yeah.
how is
I,
that?
Well, yeah. Um, so much in my book regarding patience, but um, we've all got, as you know, a kind of electromagnetic field around us. And I think when you're reasonably close to someone, and that probably can be anything from, well, obviously, it's only with lovers you'd be totally close, but anything probably up to about 3 or 4 meters, your energy fields can interact. And this is a funny story actually, but it's what is empathy? Empathy is the ability to tune into other people's thoughts and emotions. I would think. I just made that definition up on the spur of the moment, but I think that's probably reasonable. And I can remember when I was young, I had uh, a a chap I was seeing for only about a month. We were still in touch. Uh, his name's Toby, and his father was a four-star general, and Toby was studying war studies. And he took me to visit some of his parents. They were American. His parents' friends in a very posh area of London. Now, bearing in mind, I'd been brought up in a tin shed, going to a place that had chandeliers and mahogany, and it was like, wow, you know. And I think I saw my first avocado. But anyway, I was Toby was sitting opposite to me. The lady of the household was to my left, and to my right was a chap who's I can't remember who he was, but anyway, we were having a lovely meal. It was really weird because I didn't know what a lot of it was, and this guy he kept going on about the guy that I didn't know about his non-specific urethritis, sexually transmitted disease, and how he was worried that his girlfriend would dumping and the tablets wouldn't work, and it was getting on my nerves a bit. So anyway, because that was work. But anyway, during the kind of little coffee break, I said, don't worry about your NSU. I said, take the tablets, you'll be fine, and your girlfriend, tell her you were drunk and it was a one-off thing, you know, because he'd misbehaved. I said, she'll forgive you. But then he looked at me in absolute horror, and he said he hadn't said a word to me all evening. And what had happened? I just tuned into his thoughts, and I thought, oh bugger, this poor bloke is probably still thinking that women can read your thoughts. But that was like an empathic communication. But
Hmm.
certainly with my patients, yeah, I would sometimes physically feel their pain, but also it's a lot of doctors are the same. You know, I think everybody's, you know, don't have to be a doctor. You can tell if someone's had a bad day from just their general behavior patterns, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like that's what children have, like when you go to a child and no matter
Mm,
if you're smiling or whatever, if you have
mm,
that
mm.
negative energy, the child's gonna scream, or like
Yeah.
dog, you
Oh, my
know.
dog by Jack Russell. Yeah, and he's so lovely. If I'm not feeling well and I'm in bed, he's just absolutely lovely. But he's a typical terrier, you know. Best of the time is he's the boss in the house, which is good.
And also some like neurotic people, some like crazy people.
Mm,
I feel like
mm,
they find really good at tuning into that space. But yeah, is that what you would call it? Like, do you think you kind of like are in there's like the channel that everybody is on, called that consensus reality. I don't know. And then there's like
mm,
these other like versions or realities that are also going on that you could tap into maybe.
mm.
And
Yeah, are you talking about the idea of universal consciousness and because I think yeah, um, I just it's loads of different concepts, but uh, I've written on my webpage. It's drblackwell.co.uk, and I've written one article called "Ripples in Time," and um, I found it quite. Sorry, my brain has gone. Can you remind me what we're talking about? I suddenly went into outer space there.
yes, we're talking about the consciousness, the universal consciousness,
Oh
and
yeah. That's right. Sorry, they talked about random event generators. It was in an article I read,
I love.
and they found that during Princess Diana's funeral, it kind of went chaotic, and it was like as if uh, the so many millions of people were watching the funeral that it affected the kind of energy field, and it was affecting these random event generators. So yeah, I think I went into outer space for a few moments then.
Yeah. Yeah. That is interesting how quantum computers actually create randomness. And it's interesting. I had another guest on here that explained to me how when you give like a certain guideline to like a quantum computer or something,
Mm, mm.
it will start generating kind of nature's patterns, like a leaf. Like
Oh, that's it. That's interesting. I didn't know about that. Yeah. Mm,
yeah, and it's interesting to think about how how nature could be looked as random, but also like so perfect at the same time.
mm.
You know, just like a leaf, how it's just like symmetrically um perfect.
Yeah, and pine cones are one of my favorite because I've got a few pine trees in my garden. I think they're
Oh,
very beautiful.
yeah, and it's just so random. A lot of it, you know, but it's also so familiar. So it's like it's really wild
Mm.
time we're living.
Yeah. Oh, I just love walking around my field because there's always something new. And a few years back, I like fairy lights. Surprise, surprise! And I put some fairy lights up the field, and I went out to see if they
Nice.
were working properly. And I saw the most magical sight. It was a mother polecat and four kits just playing around at my summer house. And I just took some pictures. That was beautiful. And
Yeah,
then the other day, right at the top of my field, I found a fritillary, which is a very pretty kind of wildflower, which I'd never seen in my field before. And it just appeared. I felt it was almost like magical. So yeah, I get a lot of peace from nature. And certainly when my friends come here, if they're a bit uptight, we just go for a walk around the field with the dog. And yeah, you calm down, you know.
that sounds like a healthy way to look at ourselves as well. I like a healthy way to do like internal work. You know, like
Mm,
same way you kind of look at nature. It's just kind of hard, you know, to look at yourself and be like, or also look at like the external world and be like, hey, that's you. Like those kittens are in like
mm,
some sense actually your reflection, you know, or like yeah, like
mm,
the you know the details of like the nervous system and like the eyes and how they
mm,
take data and you know you're literally like seeing and vision is basically just like your nervous system, you know, trying to guess
mm,
what's outside and
mm. I think the eyes really are the gateway to the soul. But
yeah, right, like complete it's like the point where external and internal reality kind of
yeah,
separate. I get.
yeah.
Yeah, because I like to think about like if you were to chop off like parts of my body, at which point will I say, okay, that is my identity, like in that part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. And I think our consciousness is throughout our body. I think the brain is kind of a receiver and a
Hmm.
processor. But this is a story, again, I've written about it, but it still affects me quite profoundly because years ago, I was doing a regular outpatients in my clinic. And I had a medical student. Her name was Becky. I think I've given her a different name in the book, but anyway. And she was sitting in with me, lovely girl. And she had just said to me, "Oh, I'm sitting in your clinic today." It was part of her training. And we had a lady come in who'd actually been raped, and she was incredibly naturally upset and didn't want to be examined because I was very much aware that when you're examining a patient who's been sexually assaulted, it's almost like reenacting it when you're taking the swab. So
Yeah.
I needed to do the test for her, for her medical examination. But what I said to her, I said, "Look, and I do spiritual healing as well. And would you like me to try and calm you down just by holding her hands?" And what I did, I said to her, "Is there any place in your home that you feel safe?" And she said, "Oh yes, there's a chair in her back garden." So I got her to take a few deep breaths, and I put her, asked her to go into her seat in the back garden and calm her down. So once I got into calm state, I could do the test and get over it. Anyway, at the end of the clinic, my student said, that was really weird. She said, whilst I'd been calming the patient down, she'd felt much calmer. So it was almost as though I'd produced a calm field or somehow generated a field of calmness. And she said, can you show me how you do it, you see? So the student put her hand up. I said, look, let me just put my hands either side of your hands. And she did, of one hand, And she said, oh, that's weird. I can feel electricity. And I said, yeah, energy healing can feel a bit like that. And then I went into a kind of trance state. And I said, I can feel warm frog spawn in my hands. And I said, no, it's not frog spawn. It's the fetal membranes of a lamb. And I said, did you help deliver a lamb when you were younger? I said, because I said, something happened that changed your fate into your destiny. And I said, I can see you kneeling on wet grass, clearing a lamb's throat. And she was utterly shocked because she said that's exactly what had happened. When she was a teenager,
Oh,
she had visited a friend whose father was a shepherd, and a sheep had dropped a lamb in front of them. And her friend was a bit squeamish, so Becky had bent down. And she said she decided then she wanted to be a midwife and then changed her mind and decided to be a doctor. And she couldn't understand why I'd been able to pick it up just from putting my hands either side of her hand. So I think our consciousness is probably just, we are consciousness, our whole body.
hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably all. Yeah. And so how would you say that you like I know this is kind of hard to explain, but
Mm.
like I'm just trying to think about would you say that everybody could be empaths or
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just our material world produces so much noise, and
right.
it's like trying to hear a little one. Because what happened with me is that I was a reasonably good medium. I was quite good at reading tarot, but when my mother, who was by that time in her late 80s, well, she was 88, when she moved in with me in Swansea, I was still working as a consultant, and I was having meditation groups once a fortnight. But my mother had dementia, and the demands of taking care of her and working, and my connection with spirit just cut off. It was like having a light switched off. Um, and so I think with most people, you've got the cost of living, you've got global warming, you've got wars. If you're afraid somebody's going to bomb you any minute, you can't get into that state of relaxation where you can tune in um, to universal consciousness because you're just trying to survive. So I think our world, it's like our world is too much with us. Um, I can't remember which poet said that. Is it our world is too much of us late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. I can't remember who was the poet, but that's kind of what I'm trying to get across. I think that very few of us are privileged enough to have a life that's sufficiently uncluttered. Uncluttered by that, I mean having responsibilities, that you can get into that calm state you need to be able to hear the soft voice of spirit. Is that kind of
Yeah.
an answer? I'm not sure.
Yeah, because it feels like what we do day to day, even if it's something that makes you unhappy, feels like it takes like it's an art. Like it takes so much
Mm.
like work to just keep a body like functioning, like
Yeah.
healthy,
Mm.
and just like
You're so right, dear. And you're young. I'm 75. You can imagine what I'm like in the morning. I thought, oh, I'm awake. Luckily, I wake up to having a Jack Russell with his paws around my neck and his head against my head. So I thought, oh, somebody loves me. There is a reason to live. And then you get up and you think, oh, I can still pee. That's good. And then have a shower and then gradually come round. So, yeah, but it gets worse as you get older, just to reassure you.
yeah. Yeah, but it's still like incredibly like impressive, like you gotta give like yourself a little credit. And then like with that, like realizing that you're putting a lot of energy within that, then you can start. realizing that like you're gonna spend energy anyways. Like energy is
Mm,
being
mm,
spent just by
mm,
keeping your
mm,
nervous, like your entire
mm,
body working. So maybe there's a way to channel that energy, but a lot of people don't even get there because they're just
mm,
reacting, right? Like it's just there's not that space to.
mm. And it's so sad. I think that's why you got so many drug addicts, is because they're trying to escape reality. Whereas if you can learn to live with reality, and I think that one thing that the only thing that's constant in the world is change.
Yeah,
And that was when I remember I was lying in hospital. I thought, can't get any worse than this. It usually did, but then it gradually gets better.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Right, right. But yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. How we can do that work to how would you recommend that people do that work to kind of quiet down? Because like I love this one quote that is like like it's so funny like asking you like how do people quiet down? Like but uh it's okay, I kind of lost my train of thought, but maybe I'll just leave it there. Like any
That's
tips?
all right. I'm glad you lost your train of thought because I did earlier on. I feel less embarrassed now.
There we go. Where are you?
Da, 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 da.
Oh, I remember. Thank you. Thank you. I remember. Okay,
Mm,
so in the Bible it says, if you had a mustard seed worth of faith, you could move mountains. And
mm,
and then someone added to this. I don't know who. I heard it from somebody. Someone added, um, if okay, so the idea is that if you had the faith, and the knowledge and everything needed to be able to magically move a mountain, then
mm,
you also have the knowledge of why you put that mountain there in the first place, and therefore you don't move it because, there's a reason why it's there. You know,
mm. I'm not quite sure if I'm getting you, but um, I think I'm just trying to looking back at my own life as to things that have seemed impossible. And I've just, because I'm terribly stubborn, I'm a Taurus. I thought, not having this. And again, it relates to my medical career because most of my life was in medicine. And I can remember I was a junior doctor at the Middlesex, and a lady came to see me who had a very fishy smelling discharge. I know it's a bit crude for your podcast, perhaps. And I thought, this isn't normal. And I did all the tests. We didn't find anything. And I got my boss. I said, look, this poor woman, blah, blah, blah. And he said, it's normal for women to smell fishy. I thought, I don't. So that stuck in my mind. And it really annoyed me. And so when I went to move to St. Thomas's and had the opportunity to do some research into the microbiology of the vagina, I spent 25 years studying it. And I did the work that, firstly, in 1982, we published a paper showing that women with these abnormal, unpleasant discharges had an abnormal bacterial flora. But then I did work in 83, which showed that metronidazole kind of cured it and it got it a product license in the UK. So it was stubbornness. To me, the mountain was, everybody said, at least my boss was saying, look, that's normal. And I thought, no, it isn't. So I was being stubborn. Let's move the mountain. And then the same thing happened again to me when I moved to Swansea. I was seeing quite a number of patients who developed pelvic infection after they'd had a termination of pregnancy. And I contacted one of my gynae friends and said, look, is there any Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists guidelines on screening for infection prior to termination or giving them antibiotics? So that led to 4 years more research, and the guidelines eventually were changed so that patients now get prophylaxis. So I think that even though each individual may be just a mustard seed, if you've got the determination, then I always feel the spirit manifested, because for me, I had these thoughts that really annoyed me, that I thought patients weren't being managed properly. And then it's almost as though spirit brought to me the people I needed to produce a team that could move these mountains? And again, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I try to tune into
Right. Yeah,
your
right.
thoughts.
Yeah, that's
Your
a little
thoughts.
bit. I don't even think
Mm,
it was a question. It was really more of just
mm,
like a
mm, mm.
like a quote, just
Yeah, no, it's right. It's amusing, which is great. I don't mean
yeah.
amusing as in funny, but amusing, and
Yeah.
yeah,
But I think what I meant it in like a like with certain like supernatural or like psychic abilities, like that uh like that kind of would um I don't know, it's like do you think that trying to get psychic abilities do you think that kind of is something people should strive for? Do you like because it's such a weird way to blend that into like regular society. If we tried to like regulate everybody just tapping into that
mm,
themselves, like yeah, what do you think about that? How would you
But
like
yeah, I think to be honest, that of my medium friends that I know, um, I think most of them have been that way since they were born, and sometimes there's a family history. Um, But when you think about it, if everyone could read each other's thoughts, the world wouldn't work because unless you can lie, you have to learn to lie to survive. Oh
right?
no, that dress does look all right, and your hair isn't that bad. You know what I mean? And so I think can you? I think there was a film about a bloke who could read people's minds. So I think we'd all go nuts
Yeah.
if we were able to tune in. And it may be that some schizophrenics uh, just don't have the filters to be able to separate physical reality from whatever non-ordinary reality is. So I think it's not necessarily a good thing because if everybody had telepathic um, or extreme empath abilities, our society wouldn't. Well, maybe it would be brilliant because everybody would have to say the truth, wouldn't they? But the truth
Right.
can be
Yeah.
painful
Yeah.
sometimes, won't it? You
They
know,
would realize that everybody's thinking the same thing.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even my dog, I can't lie to my dog. He knows if I throw a treat, it means I want him to go into another room. So but, he knows me and he forgives me. But there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. But yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I try to think about like a lot of people I feel like would say that, oh, if I had
Mm,
this, then maybe my life wouldn't be so bad. You know what I'm saying? Like if I had um, X, maybe like I don't want to say like psychic abilities, but if there's like a psychic ability, you could just like superpower, like not to disrespect it, but like hypothetically, like if you wanted to
mm,
if you're like in a sticky situation and you just had that thought. Um, it's it's like so interesting that to think that even if you did get that, like you would still be here, like you would have different problems maybe, but it's not like you can just have like some ability and that will, change everything. But it's more of like there's like the way that you went to school and did research and that's how you move that mountain. Like we have to, take like work within the confines of this
of the ordinary world, yeah.
the universal consciousness.
Mm,
So yeah, I feel like a lot of people have these experiences. They have like crazy
mm,
psychic ability, like moments, like me when I told you
mm,
that I had that dream and I lived it. Like I swear I have that all the
mm,
time. And manifestation, like I feel like I've manifested this podcast, and
mm,
a lot of other things. But at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, I still have to go to work now. I have to go be a cashier and talk to all of these
mm.
people and live back in the normal world. Do you have any tips for trying to blend a lot of that mysticism? I guess that's kind of what we've been talking about this entire podcast, um with the worker bee virtue type of, you know, reality that we're in, per se.
How to blend spiritual ideas with
Yeah, okay.
your work situation? I was lucky, you see,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it lucky because it wasn't until I went to Swansea that I became much more, when I got a consultant post, more open about the paranormal experiences I had. And by that time, I'd had well, two and then three Lancet papers. So you become accepted as an academic and therefore, in theory, not insane. And I'd got a bit of gravitas. I was chairman of the Trust Consultants Committee and blah, blah, blah. And so it was easier for me to accept, because when I used to go to work every morning as I went through into the hospital, I used to actually say in my head, Dear Mother, Father, God, Great Spirit, if it be thy will, please let the healing energies flow, if it's for the patient's greater good. And that was like to go through my head. And so I always used to shake hands with my patients when they came in, because I felt then that the goodwill I was feeling for them may flow. But I always put the onus on spirit, whoever that is, as to whether, because some people I would see just didn't want to get better. They wanted to be victims of their own problems. But I've forgotten what the question was now. How do you blend it? Well, for me, it was easy, because I was in a healing profession, and do you know, of all the things, none of my patients ever thought I was mad. None of them ran out screaming. Like one occasion, a patient come in and I went, "Oops," like that, and she said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, a little black dog has just jumped onto my lap." A spirit dog, and I could feel his warmth and I could see him. And luckily the patient was also, she said, "Oh, it's all right, I'm a medium." She said, "That's Sooty, it's my late father's dog." So it was really weird. It's like as if, I think spirit used to have fun with me. Because a normal patient, if a patient wasn't a medium, they might have thought I was crazy, but they saw the dog as well. So I was just very lucky. Um, uh, but how can you combine spirituality if you're doing, um, yeah, something else like a postman or a builder? Um, I haven't got any ideas on that, to be honest. I don't know what a spiritual postman would do, but I think sometimes just finding a little bit of peace for yourself. And if I'm really going crazy, I either have reflexology or Indian head massage, and that usually grounds me.
Yeah. That's a great tip.
and
Um,
a Jack Russell,
what is that?
a Jack Russell dog. They're the best.
Oh, gotcha.
Having a dog, because they teach you humour.
Yeah.
They teach you how to live in the moment, and they teach you unconditional love. And it's very hard. I cuss as much as anybody else, really. If things go wrong, if I stub my toe or whatever.
Yeah, and it's also really like it's just like the connection that you can have with a dog. Like that
Mm,
just seems like for some reason not fair because it's like not a human. And you're like, how could I feel
mm, mm,
more love for this animal
mm,
than
mm,
like
mm,
a
mm,
human or something? But it's true, or like it's probably the same type of love that you feel in nature
mm,
or
mm, mm.
art and
And they
stuff.
can be feisty. My dog is very friendly towards people, but if I
Mhm.
try to get between him and a hedgehog, which I often have to, he'd have my hand off. So I have to put a bucket over the hedgehog, get a watering can to get the dog away from the. It's quite funny, really, little routines. Yeah, so I think that's probably why I like dogs, because they're honest. If you
Mm.
do something they don't like, they bite you. They don't stab you in the back.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was interesting what you said earlier about how if it's to be good, you're like saying like a prayer for your patient
Mm,
for her sake.
mm,
And I found that sometimes I've done that with my own suffering, like just
mm,
like this is not my suffering, but it's just like the suffering that's going on.
mm,
You know what I mean? And it's not that big of a difference, but it's I don't know. I think that's interesting. Like it's like the world's suffering, it's not just your suffering.
mm,
And same when you
mm.
flip it, it's like
No,
when you
it's true. You've only got to switch the telly on, and and it's just so sad what's going on. And you can't believe how people are so resilient. If, I think, how would I cope in that situation? Because they have a whole family taken away and your home, your food, everything. And I just got a load of respect for them. And it's very sad. And I often feel inadequate because what can we as individuals do in the
Right.
chaos that's existing?
Right. Yeah, that's why like I find that the human condition is so flexible. Like that's why when I find it funny when people ask me like if you're happy, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy. There's a lot of things to be happy about. Then they'll ask me, are you sad? I'll be like, well, yeah, I'm sad. There's a lot of
Mm,
things to
mm,
be
mm,
sad. And it's like all of
mm.
the emotions are kind of like going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just have to like learn how to.
Mm. Yeah. In fact, I think I'm pretty sure this is a correct quote, but I used to love Einstein, and
Me too.
it was the pursuit of happiness is the ideal of swine. Now, that's one of his quotes, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't know. I kind of I've just got this very weird view of life when I see people now jetting off and they don't need to jet off and they're polluting the
Mm,
atmosphere. And are they happy? And you look, and there's an awful lot of suicides, even amongst very what we would consider fortunate, wealthy people.
mhm,
And I think we need to go get back to what is really important in life. And for me, I would say the most important for me, well, you have to have your own health because if you can't be healthy, you can't be nice to other people. But also, close, real friendships to me are important because I don't have any kids, so I tend to adopt uh, friends. Some different age groups. Some are grandchildren, some are sisters, etc. You know.
yeah. Yeah, that's it. Because it's so like to me, like just like the same way that you said, like you wanted to come back, whether it was for like your mom or something.
Mm, mm,
Like
mm,
it's just like when everything is just like really quiet or not, it's just like so beautiful, like
mm, mm,
in my opinion. But it's hard to keep it that way, it comes and goes those periods of time
mm.
throughout
I
the
feel
day.
I want to give you a hug actually, but it's probably probably quite difficult. We'll do a virtual one,
Get a
okay?
physical hug.
Yeah. Oh, that was lovely.
But yeah, no, you are helping out so much, just by, physically with your research and also um spiritually and emotionally with all these shows and stuff. Did you have anybody in your life that was like you to me? You know what I'm saying? Like any teachers or anybody who kind of what's your opinion on that?
um, hmm. Thinking of my family. Well, I think I was I'm certainly the first doctor in the family. Although
Hmm.
there is a possibility there was a lady called Elizabeth Blackwell who was the first doctor in the kind of UK, and there may have been some genetic links to her. I don't know, um, but I think my parents were accepting of the paranormal, although my mother uh, claimed she was a complete skeptic. Um, but there wasn't, no, there was no one. Uh, it, I think it just came from within, to be honest. And because I was on my own a lot as a child, I was just up the field and I used to love tree hugging and talking to
Me
the
too.
bees. So I think you said if there was anything that taught me,
Yeah.
um, very much a work ethic, which I got from my family, but there wasn't any particular teacher. I suppose I learned a lot. People like Lynn McTaggart, who wrote The Field. You know Lynn McTaggart's work. She's amazing. She was an investigative journalist, and is it What Doctors Don't Tell You? That she's. If you look up Lynn McTaggart, she's got very well known, certainly in the UK and internationally. And I found reading her book called The Field saved my sanity because when I was getting a lot of paranormal experiences, I had initially a little bit of problems um, because I was left-brained in terms of my research, but also was getting, I needed to be able to scientifically understand what was going on. And in that book, I read it and I thought, oh yeah, I'm not mad. So her work, and also Caroline Miss, I think she's lovely. And
That's pretty.
so I go to her workshops when she's in the UK. Um, I find her very amusing, as well as incredibly bright, and I've learned a lot from her because she's developed, as you probably know, the Jung's idea of archetypes. So she's expanded more so on that. And listening to her, I just that helps. Um, I got lovely medium friends who've explained a lot of things, but I can't say there was one individual who became a mentor. I think Mother Nature was my mentor, and also my patients. You know, you learn so much from patients.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's really interesting. Have you ever kind of uh seen the opposite, let's say, like somebody who, well, maybe not the opposite, but just maybe some advice for somebody who kind of has tapped into these abilities, or maybe they had a near-death experience and they're kind of like scared or have like a general repulsion or fear against all of this, who push up against it because maybe it's just an uncomfortable situation, or because uh spiritual whiplash or whatever, cosmic whiplash,
Mm,
you know?
yeah. I tell you something. Um, do you know about Kundalini experiences?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because it'll be another hour if we go into the detail over that.
Yeah.
But years ago,
Get up.
years ago, um, I had a Kundalini experience, which was actually quite unpleasant. It wasn't. I didn't request it, but anyway. Uh, but I had various physical and mental. I think it increased my spiritual awareness at a too high a rate, really. And I hasten to add, I've never been crazy, but I remember about a year later, within 1 week, two patients came to see me, young women who'd had Kundalini experiences, and they thought they were going out of their mind. And they had pelvic pain because of it. And anyway, I examined them, and I was able to explain to them the effects of a Kundalini on the body. And then a few days later, I had another woman with exactly the same story. And that was the only two ever that have come to me with adverse paranormal experiences. And I was able to help them because I'd gone through it myself. Um, and I'm not sure if that's answering your question. I do sometimes, I say some frequently, really. People will tell me, and I'm thinking of two medical friends of mine, young women, who'd had similar Kundalini experiences, and I was able to explain it to them and calm. They found it was fine. In fact, I had a lovely email. Thank you for that. I advised her to read a particular book, and she said exactly what happened. And then they're okay because once you know what's going on, it no longer becomes something that's fearful. It's just part of being an empath, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, one question that I have, uh, just what is your opinion on kind of like because we were talking a little bit about medicine
Mm,
and how it can take away pain
mm,
instantly, and how there's other medicines like mushrooms and other psychedelics who
mm, mm,
can do
mm,
other type of pain heal,
mm,
you know? Do you have any thoughts on those types of medicine?
mm. I do. Um, if I got a headache, if I had a headache, I'd take paracetamol, or more likely, I just massage my head. Um, with regard to things like magic mushrooms, yeah, I would not have the nerve to try them because I tell you why. I am so sensitive to drugs. I can guarantee. In fact, I remember about a year ago, I went to see my doctor. I can't remember what it was. Probably had a chest infection or something, and he grinned, a lovely old boy, and he said, "Have you come to see us so that we can try to kill you again. Because if there's a medication and somebody's got an allergic reaction to it, that'll be me. And so I wouldn't dabble in psychedelic drugs, mainly because I'd be afraid of the side effects. Not that I'm against them; they're probably quite fascinating.
Mm.
And I think, wasn't it either Watson or Crick? I think the chaps who got the Nobel Prize for discovering DNA. I think one of them was actually on a psychedelic drug when he figured out about the structure of
Yeah.
DNA.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it opens up the connections in your brain, so that so that it maybe enhances our awareness. I don't know, but I wouldn't have the nerve to use them. You know.
Yeah, a lot of people say that they're very similar. Like a lot of people have, a lot of people would compare the psychedelic experience to the dying experience, which I think is really interesting. Kind of like a,
Oh right, yeah.
yeah, kind of like a mental. Some people they call it. A lot of people call it ego death as well, which is very intense.
Mm,
But it is very tied into with the
mm.
idea of death and uh, I um. I forgot what I was gonna say, but
It's all right. Don't worry. Don't worry.
oh
Carry
yeah,
on. You're making me feel more relaxed.
yeah. No, I think
Cheers.
I was just gonna say that uh like it's like a near death experience. I think that's just what I want to get to. Like it's a lot of
Oh,
people,
you.
and I think they are kind of similar, honestly, in my opinion, which makes
Mm,
me think like maybe what they do and maybe what a near death experience does. It kind of like takes you just outside of the regular just like reality, shows you all the
mm,
different kind of
mm,
realities that are kind of going
mm,
on.
mm. I think it's real though because a couple of reasons. Uh, I understand that we've got something called an entelechy, which is our perfect template in the spiritual world, and my friend Penny Sartori, in one of her books, and she's told me personally, had a patient who had a fixed flexion deformity before he had a near death experience. And then after it was virtually better, which you can't really explain. It was something that he'd had all his life. So that's the one thing. So I think something weird does happen at a spiritual level, but also where patients in their NDEs can see what's going on, maybe in remote rooms, so that their consciousness has obviously left their body. And I don't think you could explain that in a purely biochemical reaction going on in the brain.
Yeah, it's really hard to also explain dreams, I think. You know,
Mm,
like we can explain
yeah.
the your sleep cycle, but
Mm,
yeah, dreams we can't explain. And we do it so much. We spend so much time dreaming.
mm, mm,
Which I think is really interesting, doing work in your sleep, dreaming. Uh, I think that space in between going to sleep and falling asleep is like
mm,
a really, really nice space where your consciousness,
mm,
you can kind of be awake a little bit in your dream, like
yeah.
dreaming. Um, or astral projecting. I know that's such a sticky word, but what do you think about that? Have you ever astral projected or anything?
No, unfortunately, no. No. Um, but I can understand the idea of lucid dreams.
Yeah.
Um, I think if I'm really stressed out, I dream about, and if any of your readers can, your listeners can explain it, uh, it's always the same theme. I'm on a holiday, and I virtually never go on holiday. I'm on a bus trip abroad with a group of other people, and I get isolated. I then get mugged, and my passport, etc., is taken away. And I'm isolated in some foreign country on my own, and then I wake up in a panic.
Whoa.
But it'll be a different country and different scenarios. But if I'm stressed, that's what happens. So I've
Yeah.
obviously got abandonment issues. Um, but in terms of actual lucid dreams, I think probably when I predicted my headmaster's demise, my deputy headmaster's demise, that was one. But the other one
Mm.
was when, again, I describe it in my book, of where I dreamt that one of my nurse colleagues had died. And my dream had taken me to 6 months ahead when we'd reappointed another member of staff. But I was so convinced that this poor chap had passed away, even though he'd cycled home from work, that I went into work. And I'm not an early riser, but instead of being at work, say, 8 o'clock, I was there 6:30. Only the cleaners were there because I knew this chap had died and there would be a lot of distress in the clinic. And after a while, nothing had happened, and I thought maybe I'm going crazy. But then the phone went to say he passed in his sleep, and so that was quite profound. So
Yeah.
that was like a dream state. So whether that's, I think astrally I travelled to the future then, because I didn't see his death. I saw his job being
Mhm.
replaced. I don't know, but it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating how like our mental state will affect our dreams, which makes
Oh
me
yeah,
wonder how much
yeah,
this affect our
yeah,
lives.
yeah, yeah.
You know, like
Absolutely.
a lot of people want to go they want to start at the end, you know, they want to just change um the thing that they have, you know, they want to change the external world. They want to fix something. But I have recently been playing with the idea, and this is a dangerous idea, I think, that um uh that whenever you're upset, like it's yourself. Like it's not other people's uh fault or other people's,
Mm,
you know, anything. It's usually always
mm,
just yourself. So every time I'm upset, I'm just telling myself like that's on me. Like I shouldn't be upset at all. Like I shouldn't be pushing away uh a little bit. But yeah, because I feel like if you want to do any uh true help in the world, you just have to, you know, be in a calm state of mind before anything, you know.
no, I think you're basically a nice guy, and I think some
Yeah.
people are nasty. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's nice of you to think that it's you and not other people. But I think you're very sensitive. You're a very nice young man, and maybe people take advantage of you. I don't know.
Ah, yeah, but
I could
maybe
tell you it is all your fault, mind you, and make your day really awful, but I don't think it is.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not a good way to I don't know. I think about like being in a rush, you know, like when I'm rushing, I just like I catch myself rushing and I'm like, why am I rushing? There's like no like if I'm a little bit late, like it's okay. Like that's something that I will like catch myself suddenly and it will just like change my entire reality, you know, just kind of being like, okay, way too fast, you know. Like that's
Hmm, that's
just
very good insight. Yeah, I don't know your exact situation, obviously, but
yeah.
that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, Anona, it's been such a blast. It's been already past an hour.
That's okay. That's my pleasure talking to you.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
know.
very often get a chance to talk to nice young men, you see. So I'm very naughty.
Well, thankfully you can listen to this whenever, and I'd love to have you back anytime.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and if you read my book, we can talk about the book. Would be quite nice
Yeah,
because
sure.
there's loads of weird stuff in there that I think you'd find amusing,
Yeah,
especially the chapter about when I met King Charles. That was funny.
I meant to go over that. I completely forgot. That was on my list. But yeah, I guess we'll have to leave it up for the book so people can check it out. A little
Okay.
But yeah, Anona, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Bless you.
Yeah, you too. Hare Krishna.
Namaste. Yeah. Cheers. Bye bye.
Stay.